All right, everybody, welcome to February. It is another episode of After the Close. And with me this month, we have CEO of LodeStar Software, Mr. Jim Paolino. Jim, how are you, my friend?
Oh, thanks for having me. Feeling great right now.
Why don't you tell everybody just the quick elevator pitch of what LodeStar does?
Yeah, so a company that you actually were involved in helping to start. I know you've had our co-founder on in the past.
Friend of the show, Mr. Dave Spector.
Yeah, we started 11 years ago now. So we help people. We tell people how much they're going to pay when they buy a house. It's kind of my elevator pitch for cocktail parties of people who aren't in the mortgage industry, right? But getting
Sure.
more specific than that, there's basically a bunch of forms and information and disclosures that and costs when you buy a house and when a lender, a mortgage lender, anyone you're using for the loan, gives that to you. They give you a sheet of paper called the loan estimate form. They need that to be accurate or else they pay the difference, right? These were rules that came out of Dodd-Frank in the Great Recession back when we were graduating college.
Yep.
And we basically guarantee that data, automate it, so that saves mortgage originators time and money. So our clients are banks, credit unions, mortgage companies, people who are lending money to people to then go and buy a house.
Is there a lot of lending going on right now?
It actually has picked up in January over last month. It's been better. We, probably around third quarter last year, things started to improve a little bit. But yeah, it's been slow. We kind of run counter cyclical to the industry at large, to the economy at large. So it's been a little all
You're
over the place.
you're saying you run counter-cyclical, meaning when people stop buying houses, you do well? Or what do you
No,
mean
when you look at
counter-cyclical?
like the economy doing well versus not doing well, it changes. Because usually when the economy isn't doing well, one of the things that happens is interest rates go down. And that
Sure.
usually peaks up, housing refinance activity, if not home buying activity. So the recession was a boon for us. It was fantastic, right? And not many folks are COVID. So COVID was really good because interest rates were down to 2-3%, right? That was when you bought a house. That was when a lot of people who have houses now refinance because it was a historic low.
Right.
Then in about mid 2021, they started to rise, and now those rates have gone from 2 or 3% to as high as 7%. Now they're back down to around 6 or so.
And to be clear, you're talking, when you say 7%, you mean the 30-year fixed
30-year
rate
mortgage
mortgage,
rate.
not say like
Yep.
Fed funds, which is what like gets quoted
Correct.
a
Yeah,
lot.
and
Yeah.
obviously they track a little bit. So when the Fed cuts rates or raises rates, mortgages will flow. But the 30-year mortgage rate is what we look at.
I gotcha.
So in 2021, that started to go up as the economy was doing fine. Right now, in attempting to curb inflation, that's gone up really high. And then if we got to a point where there was a hard landing, was a recession, that would actually be good for interest rates because they would start to go down.
It's
I don't
like
know if that's
it's like
necessarily going to happen, but
that's what Brad Pitt said when they were in The Big Short. They're all yelling and screaming. They're so happy they got their credit default swaps, and Brad Pitt looks at him and goes, "What are you fucking kidding me?" Like
yeah,
every time the unemployment rate goes up, like people get depressed, people
yeah,
die, people
yeah,
have problems, they become alcoholics
yeah,
and stuff, and the two of them are just like, "Oh well, but it's great for us."
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm rooting for that necessarily, but it's just what we run, right? And part of it is when, the average folks doing well with their investment account, retirement account, those types of things, we might not be because of interest rates. So it's,
Oh
it
yeah,
works out in
yeah.
the wash, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. It's always there's always two
Yeah,
sides of the same coin.
yeah,
Whatever the situation may be economically, somebody's
yeah.
making money.
Yeah.
You can be damn
I
sure of
mean, I
that.
remember in college too, when like this was my first real recession running the business, right? Or at
Hmm.
least first down market for us running the business. I was, more of a spectator in 2008, 2009. We were still in college. I remember you were running the finance club. We were meeting in that lab, wondering what's going to happen. What are the announcements? Do you remember Lehman Brothers, when they closed down the day of our career fair at Lehigh?
I mean I remember when Lehman collapsed for sure.
Yeah.
I don't specifically recall that that was the day of one of our career fairs,
It
but it
might have
makes
been
sense.
like the week of or a few days before. So they
Right in
didn't
the
show
pocket
up.
there, yeah.
At their booth, someone put a gone fishing sign. And it's one of like my like lingering memories
Oh,
of
for
all of
sure.
that. Yeah.
It's funny how you mentioned the fact that this is your first tough market. Because I mean, technically it wasn't a recession, at least not yet. But
No,
it's been
well,
the
just
first
in our
tough,
industry, right?
yes,
In our industry, we went from a 30-year high to a 30-year low, right? This was
right.
a recession in the mortgage industry.
Absolutely. The banking
Yeah.
industry as well
Yeah.
is experiencing a
Right.
recession, just
Yeah.
not quite on the map yet
Yeah.
on this official statistics. But you know
Yeah.
what? That's like saying to somebody who's drowning, well, technically everyone else is fine. It's like they're
Yeah.
they're having problems, so that's what they're concerned about.
Right.
But you mentioned that this is our first down market, and it's funny you bring something like that up because we're career-wise, we've both been out of school about the same time, and we're both
Yeah.
like progressing. And I'd say the exact same thing that this is the first time most adults in the getting into the prime of their career have experienced a tough financial market.
Mhm.
08 happened, but many people really weren't exposed yet.
Yeah. And then in some cases, the pandemic, right? Because it affected certain jobs and certain people too. Maybe fewer of our peers too, but that was definitely a disruption.
That was a disruption, but that was
Yeah.
a very exogenous sort of.
Yeah. But
Uh,
I mean, I knew people who lost their jobs
oh yeah,
from
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yes, that would fair. I know what you're saying, and
Mhm.
I agree with you on that. When 08 hit, you mentioned Lehman fell. I like to
Mhm.
say, like, whenever somebody's complaining about it being hard to find a
Yeah.
job, I'd be like, I tried being a finance major in October of 08.
Yeah.
Like, it was rough out there. You
Yeah.
know, I used to say that, the people who were getting the canned goods together and getting their guns together and going to their bug out bags out into the mountains, that was still crazy, but it was a little less crazy at that time. It was just a slightly less crazy at that
Yeah.
time because of how bad it actually was for those couple months.
Yeah, I mean, you look at us kind of generationally, what we've gone through too, of like that recession as we were graduating college, what
Hmm.
happening with affordability, what's happening with a lot of other things. Like it definitely, I think, has colored the way, millennials look at home ownership, they look at jobs, they look at a lot of other things. So it is interesting to kind of look at that experience, just as, the people who probably graduated college or were in high school during the pandemic, have a different take because of all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I have said, because it's no secret that I'm working my way through the problem, so to speak.
Yeah.
But um, I have said repeatedly that I'm now, as an adult with real responsibilities and real concerns and real obligations,
Mhm.
that it was oddly nice to have had like a dry run when I was younger
Yeah.
because emotionally, self-confidence,
Yep.
just the whole idea that things can be bad, but they get better. It's
Yeah.
helpful that I watched the '08 recession hit because yeah, it was hard to find a job then. But you know what? Eventually you do, and then
Yeah.
it kind of recovers, and then you can go on a nice run afterwards. So that really helps now if you are experiencing any sort of financial difficulties because of the
Mhm.
environment. That's
Right.
really the trick.
Mhm.
By contrast, we've been talking to some of our neighbors who are, roughly our same age, but
Mhm.
the key difference is they started working by 2012, 2013,
Mhm.
and they do not know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
They have never been in a real slump of a market, and they don't
Mhm.
really have a sense of when it might pick back up.
Yeah.
So they are much more, to be blunt, afraid of what's
Yeah.
going on and what's going to be next.
Yeah.
It's telling how that experience matters.
Yeah. And the way I think of it was when we started LodeStar. So that was 2013, right? I took a six-figure pay cut. I was, didn't sign a client for 8 months. Like had support from a family business, which was a lot of how I got into this in the first place.
Hmm.
But like, I felt like I was effectively playing CEO for a while. In doing that. I remember one time you and I were out in Hoboken and it was like 3 o'clock. We were having a beer before you went to grad school. You saw people you were walking around and you said like, hey, I wonder if they run businesses too.
Yeah, it is a very different world
But
being your own boss versus
and
not.
it felt like a lot of pressure then, right? Because it was, oh, we're not selling, we're losing money. Personally, I was putting myself in a very hard financial position because I was just taking on a lot of debt. My personal finances weren't as tight as they should have been. Thought things were going to be a lot faster, a lot easier, quite frankly. But if you were to take that pressure now and measure it in, foot pounds or however you measure pressure, I probably have about 10 times as much now,
Oh
right? But
yeah.
like I don't feel stressed. So like your capacity to deal with it is important, right? Because there's wearing that employer hat is different, right? Because I'm gonna be fine. But like, are you making decisions that then affect other people's jobs? Whose 12-year-old is on the company health insurance policy, right? Like
Mm,
those are the types of things that then, especially as a parent too, start to get heavier. So I like your point about the test run because like you have to get used to it. The same as, you look at someone who's in high school or in college feeling stress, and it's easy for you to be like, that's not real stress, right? But at the time it feels like a lot, right? Because your ability to deal with it is different.
absolutely. What it is at the end of the day, it's a sign of growth.
Hmm.
Like if you're constantly in your comfort zone, you're not growing.
Yeah.
And sometimes what's
Hmm.
there's I think you may have said this at one point or another. There's like the Mario Andretti quote where it's like if the car is not vibrating and rumbling on the verge of falling apart, you're not going fast enough. It's something
I
along
think
those
I've
lines.
heard
I
that.
have
I'm
to
not
look it
sure if
up.
I said that, but yeah, I like that.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I'll have to look it up. I'll throw it in
Yeah.
the episode mentions at the end of the episode the exact quote. But the basic
Yeah.
idea is like you're not
Yeah.
going to win, you're not going to get ahead if you're just sort of like
Yeah.
moseying in the shallow end of the pool and kind
Yeah.
of just sitting there or just
Yeah. I
driving
say
the
to our
speed limit.
team all the time, if you're not scared, you're not pushing hard enough.
That's the exact that's
Yeah.
the essence of it
Yeah.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I
And
don't know how many of them like that. Something like the right people do.
you
So
know, that's
yeah.
that's the way it is. I
Yeah.
remember when you decided you were going to start LodeStar and go out
Hmm.
on your own, and I at the time where we were with our own personalities and our own previous experiences, I
Hmm.
remember thinking like, at least from an outside observer, you seemed naively confident. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the right way to frame it, but you're just like, this is gonna be great. We're gonna do, and we're like gonna be good to go. And I was like, man, he better be right.
I remember at one point you said, I was like, yeah, I'll be doing a little bit of everything. You were like, no, you'll be doing a lot of everything.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
were
That's
right.
mhm.
No, and I got my ass kicked, right? And we had to make a lot of changes. There were a lot of hard things. I took on family money that eventually paid back, got everyone out of the business actually just this past year. But it was a learning experience, right? It was definitely
Feet
hard
to the
and making a
fire,
lot of mistakes.
baptism by
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Um,
maybe more less fire, more water. Maybe it was more like
Yeah,
treading
I
a
mean,
roller
and I was
coaster at times.
26, right? And I was able to do it because I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't even have my girlfriend left the country right before I started my business, right? And I eventually met my now wife right when things were actually, at its lowest point. Um,
Things
and
can always get
yeah,
lower.
no kids. Yeah, exactly. But what to date has been my lowest point, I guess. So yeah, it's
It's always darkest before
fortunate, but
dawn.
yeah, well, exactly. And then I think it's also a good segue to eventually talk about parenting because like ignorance is bliss, right? With I think both with parenting and also with starting a business, right? Because like I've often said if you went and told me everything I would go through and how long it would take, like I said, I didn't return to my old pay for like 6 years.
I
Um,
hear you. Yep.
if you told me all that, I wouldn't have done it. Right.
That's the trick. If you told people what it was going to be like,
Yeah.
many of them wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and I probably was overly optimistic. That's my personality. Definitely naive, but like if I didn't have as much of that, I wouldn't have done it. So it's, part of it. And then once you get in, you have to figure it out, right? But I think that ignorance is bliss is true, in my opinion, of most things in life.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, you're talking about the same goes for parenting as it goes for like starting
Yeah.
a business. I mean, let's forget the whole like cliche analogy. Oh, my business is my baby. When you're talking about real human being
Yeah.
babies, that is a whole different can of worms.
Yeah. I
We
said that
are
until I had a child, but
Yes, yes. We are both on the verge of having yet another child,
yeah.
and a lot of the fun in our house has been talking about honestly how like lax we feel about yet another one coming
Hmm.
because it's just going to be like get in line and go with the flow. Like they're just going to have
Yeah.
to roll with it because we already have gone through it all. Like I have a
Right.
sick child upstairs right now.
Yeah.
And during our firstborn, if they had sniffles or whatever else, you're so amped
Yeah.
up and worried. And what do I do? Do I stay home? Do I go to
Yeah.
work? Do I drop them off? Do I go to the doctor? What do I do?
Hmm.
And this one is just like, just lay down. You'll be fine in a couple hours.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what the
Well,
next one will be.
we'll see. For me, it's this will be number two, right? So I'm not quite at that level, I think. And part of it is like that ignorance is bliss is kind of gone this time because you remember, you kind of know the pain that's coming in a way. Um, a little
Yeah,
bit.
that
So
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, like you know you're going to be tired, you know you're going to be up at night, like all of that. So I think it, not that there isn't excitement, but I feel like that definitely, that naivete is gone in some ways.
And but the other piece of that puzzle though is you have gone through the entire arc of whatever event it is. So what I mean is you've been
Yeah,
through like a child getting sick. The
right.
kid
You know what to do.
looked a
Yeah,
little bit sick, then was clearly sick. You had to administer medicine in any
yeah,
number of holes in their body.
yeah, yeah,
Then you had to watch them get better, and then they were better, and you returned to your routine. So you did
yeah,
the whole arc of it. And it's
right.
similar to what we were saying about the recession from '08.
Yeah,
Like we got through one
right.
once.
Yeah.
So now we know we can do it again.
Well, that naivete gets replaced with confidence, right?
And
Or
experience.
maturity, or what you do, experience of like, yeah, I'm not naive because I've done this, so I know what's coming, but I also know how to deal with it because I've done this.
Sure, sure,
Hmm.
absolutely. And you know that it's going to end. You know, that, like when
Yeah,
you have your firstborn and they're like 4, 5, 6 months old, and you're up in the middle of the night for like the fourth night in a row doing the
yeah,
bottles and doing the changing and all this stuff,
hmm,
you're like, oh my God, this is like,
yeah,
what did I sign up for? But by the time you have that second or third kid, you also know that it's like, all right, this is going to be like a shitty 6 months.
yeah,
And then you pass that phase, and then they start
hmm,
sleeping, and then you just move on with
yeah.
life.
So one question I wanted to ask you with
Mhm.
number three coming, what are you dreading the most?
Um, That's a good question. I think there are two things.
Hmm.
The first is we're introducing a boy to the mix.
Hmm.
So there's going to be questions abound from my two daughters and
Yeah,
honestly even my wife, which now the tables have turned and I'm suddenly the one who now has to explain all these types of things that a boy is going to behave like and
right.
do and act
Yeah,
like and
sure.
so that's going to be some like how do you explain to the 7-year old
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how some of that stuff plays out. So that's going to be a little weird to get used to, but I'm sure we'll be fine. The other thing, which is more genderless, is the random curveballs. The like you think we think we're good, and then all of a sudden the kid's just gonna like vomit, and your entire plans go out the window.
Yeah.
Like we're at the verge of returning to some sort of like planning where we all of our kids can basically indicate if there's a problem or tell us that they're gonna be, so
Right.
we
You can
we can
speak.
plan
Yeah.
and they can like hack it and we've just
Hmm.
about got back to that normalcy and that's all
Yeah.
gonna go out the window.
Yeah.
We're gonna have another mortar going off for the next year and
Was
a
it
half.
Jules like close to three? I forget.
She just turned 3. Yeah. So
Okay.
she's like potty
Yeah.
trained.
Right.
She has good vocabulary.
Hmm.
She can be entertained by herself or with a
Yeah.
sibling. Like we are just started. We're gluttons for punishment is what we are because we are just starting to get our lives back, and now we
Yeah.
basically kicked that can down the road another 3 years
Yeah.
or so. But
Hmm.
it is what it is.
Short-term pain, long-term gain.
That's what I hope. I
Yeah.
hope so. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm pretty sure that those kids are going to be my retirement. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to be like living in one of their basements, like Arthur Spooner and King of Queens. That's how I
Yeah.
feel like things are going to play out at the rate
Yeah.
things are going.
Hmm.
But
So you're betting on Scarlett or Jules at this point then?
either one, either
Yeah.
one. It's nice to have it's the heir and a spare, whatever.
Yeah.
Whichever one of them wants to
Fair.
roll, I'm more. Or
Hmm.
even if they cycle me around, they just like give me a
Yeah.
plane
Yeah. Yeah.
to where the next
Yeah.
place
Never
is.
mind Katie. Just let Dad stay in the basement.
Yeah, I guess in this scenario she died for whatever
Yeah.
reason, but oh well. She'll get over it.
She'll get over it. Yeah.
So now are you gonna have when your new number 2 comes along, are you gonna have a lot of like family support at the ready? Because that's I'll say that's the bonus this time for me. The other thing is like
Mhm.
we do not have a large family structure down here to help
Yeah.
this time around. So that's going to be, we have to account for that. We're not going to
Yeah.
have like grandma to call like on a whim to get a sitter. That's going to be the other thing, which will be different for sure.
Yeah. Not a ton. Both our parents are a few hours away. We already have them planned to kind of come down in the beginning for a
Hmm.
little bit. Like they have weeks planned for each, and then we'll get into the summer where we usually like have a trip or take some time anyway.
I gotcha.
So it'll be a little bit easier there. Sarah's sister also is a teacher, so she's off in the summer.
Okay. That's
So
helpful.
she'll be down. So I would say more than last time, but we'll probably have more needs than last time. And I think one thing that I've been grateful for too is just my job allows a good deal of flexibility.
Yeah.
Like drinking a beer and doing a podcast like this at 3 in the afternoon. So it's helpful to use that, especially, daycare will start for this kid in September. No way I'm going to be full time when that happens, right? Like it's just,
Sure.
the all the ups and downs. So just knowing that and being able to like prepare accordingly, I think will be helpful. So I can kind of be like, working as needed, and it doesn't have to be 9 to 5, can kind of be flexible and make it all work.
Yeah, that's a big one these days. I mean, a
Mm.
lot of the remote work is really starting to get squeezed out of the economy right now. Like you're
Yeah.
seeing, I think I just saw recently Wayfair, like they
Hmm.
let go a lot of like more of their white collar corporate level people,
Yeah.
and they deliberately picked a lot of the remote
Yeah.
people to get rid of.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
harder to fire someone when they're in front of you all the time.
yeah, that's true, but I'm sure that there might be, what their reasons were their reasons. My broader point is that and I've said remote work is great for parents, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I'm fine going into an office if it makes sense to,
Hmm.
but I'm also going to be like, look, you have two choices. I can
Yeah.
work from home today because I have like, the 2-year-old sitting on the
Yeah.
couch watching Coco Melon, or I can just take the day off. It's your choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how that whole thing plays
Hmm.
out. So it benefits companies to let them be as flexible as
Oh
possible.
yeah.
I don't
I
really
mean,
understand why there's such pushback
we're
on
gonna be
that.
permanently hybrid. There's no way I could ever get people to come into an office with what we're doing. I mean, honestly, like we have 16 people, 4 come into this office. Aside from me, those folk, everyone else is just like 2 days a week in office,
I
right?
got
I
you.
use this space more than anyone else.
Sure. Well, you are the boss, so there's an expectation that why
No, I just want to, quite frankly. Like if I wanted to be home all the time, I could be. Like I just like having a space. I don't want to work at home all the time, but I also can leave whenever I want. I don't have to be here all the time. I can take a day to work remote. So,
right. That makes
mhm.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
A new thing I'm finding, which I
Hmm.
kind of should have expected, is
Hmm.
any new role that's being posted on any number of portals. If they say remote next to them, within 8 hours of their posting, they have four-figure applicants. Like there'll
Yeah.
be 1,000
Yeah.
plus next to it in terms of people
Yeah.
who've applied, which the moat, which would be generated by physically having to go to the office,
Hmm.
is no longer in play there. So that's something that I guess I should have thought of or realized would eventually happen, but it really didn't dawn on me for a while that
I mean, that's the benefit of hiring folks remotely, right? Because you can draw from literally anywhere in the country or anywhere in your time zone if you prefer.
exactly. So in
Hmm.
theory, I could work for anyone anywhere, but they can also come in and try to like jam all the local applications that just happen to say they're willing to tolerate being remote. So I think you're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, or look at hybrid. I mean, it's easy to start remote, take in more applications, and then kind of pick through, right? And
Yes,
and see what you
yes.
want. And one thing that as a small business, I didn't realize at first during the pandemic when we were adding a lot of people is if you add someone in a new state in remote, that means new state unemployment tax, new state
Mm,
workers comp, another state you have to file taxes in.
mm.
So like I basically, you know, sure it's remote, but like let's put a map on of the country of where we have employees, so where I don't have to file in another state. And LinkedIn hasn't gone in smart enough to be like remote if you're in these 5 states. So
Oh, that would be smart for them
yeah.
though. That would make a lot of sense.
I mean, yeah. So that's like, yeah, you can work remote, but these are the states that I really prefer, right? There's always a preference, right? Same with same time zone and things like that. And I'm just one example, but
Hmm.
and I don't think remote's gonna go away, by
No,
and
no, it'll
large.
exist in some fashion
Yeah.
for now and going forward for sure. I I mean, remote feels like it's becoming normalized enough, or
Yeah.
hybrid remote is become normalized enough that it's not really the thing that your average person's talking about anymore. Are you seeing or getting any intrigue around AI? Has that hit come up
Yeah, I
anywhere
was
for you
wondering if
guys
this was
yet?
going to come up actually, in our conversation. Yes, is the short answer. I mean, I think it's kind of the new tech du jour topic, right? For
Hmm.
everything, when our biggest industry conference this fall, every other booth was AI, right? Someone trying to sell AI for mortgage, AI for revolutionizing XY, something like that, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of, promise and hype around it right now.
Are you seeing like actual AI, like an overlay on ChatGPT or Google's setup, or is it just like they're calling it AI and it's probably just a giant series of if-then statements behind the scenes in the code?
I think all of the above. I think it depends what the application is, right? Like in the
Okay.
mortgage space, there's a lot of interest in AI to do underwriting, to do decisioning for different mortgage files, like processing, things like that. Which is good, but the problem is too, you're hiring a vendor and then you're basically giving them thousands of files to train their set on, which means social security numbers, people's information, all of this really sensitive data. And companies aren't always super attuned to that. And then there's kind of the other side of it, the easier lifts for AI right now of, our marketing team, I'm sure uses it for subject lines, for email, copy for emails to change, for blog posts, for things like that. User
Well, even
support, customer support is a kind of easy way to knock off some AI.
yes, because even if you have just like a Gmail account, they have a good enough predictive text that it will guess what you
Yeah.
want your subject line to be. It'll try to finish off like
Yeah.
a sentence for you, which it's hit or miss. It's like fine. Like maybe
Yeah.
it's technically it's grammatically correct, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily, it doesn't have that like, personalized charm if you're trying to say whatever you're trying to say.
I mean, my experience, it gets you like 70% of the way there, using
But
ChatGPT or something like that. And then you can go from there and you need that human element, right? And will it ever close the gap? I don't know.
right. Well, I'm deliberately using ChatGPT 4 to help with the scaling of a lot of this trader data
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And it's to mixed reviews so far. A lot of it is, it hasn't really like, I'm still learning it. It hasn't really all kind
right,
of come together to really like drive the ball forward. Like I haven't made a dime off of it. Let's put it that way. You
right.
know what I mean? But it is interesting to get a
It was
sense of
probably
how this
saving
can
your
work,
time. Yeah,
what it can do to help you. So it's like I have figured out how to like generate the images for thumbnails on things that
yeah,
I'm posting, or I can use it for some scaffolding and templates is a
mhm,
good thing you alluded to. You can do like copy for stuff and
yeah,
things that might have taken maybe two or three guys, like
right,
part-time, full-time work to get all that SEO stuff and things like
yeah,
that done. If you get good enough for it, you can just have the
mhm,
prompts ready to roll and you can start to spit out what you need. So
yeah,
I've been using this as a
mhm,
tool to really get a sense of what this is and what it's not, like
yeah,
ChatGPT.
mhm,
My consensus is that it's gonna be helpful around the margins, but your high end like solutions architect for something or other is not going to have a problem anytime soon. You know what I mean?
yeah. And the way I was actually having lunch with a friend today, and we were talking about this of what's going to happen, and he's kind of all in. And like, what I think is going to happen is there are going to be a few big players that are going to be the winners here, and you can probably predict who they are already. The Microsofts of the world, the Facebooks, the people who have the bandwidth, who have the engineers, who have 500 grand per engineer to pay to do AI development. Who already own ChatGPT or other solutions, right? Like they are probably going to be able to do the wide set scale type solutions that make sense. Then there's just going to be a lot of people who find niches for this that make sense, like my company, right? You just find a niche that works. One thing I didn't know 11 years ago, right? Like the riches are in the niches, like is something I hear a lot. So I think you're going to see that with AI of, hey, this application makes a whole lot of sense for it, and this is all we do. For our podcast, we use Riverside for
I
a
know
recording,
Riverside, yes.
and they spit out kind of quick clips after because they're
Mhm.
able to go through and sense like so now I don't actually have to pay anyone to edit our episodes anymore, right? So
Right.
that's a great little like it's not crazy, but saves us money. It's effective, niche solution. Great. I think you're going to see a lot of those, and then the Microsofts of the world kind of being able to dominate the big thing.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how the owners of the AI will ultimately, like, I don't quite know what the business model is. Like
Mhm.
ChatGPT by OpenAI, you pay 20 bucks a month and you get access to the command line prompt. Cool,
Yeah.
great. Like I can make my image or I can get my
Yeah.
copywriting, whatever, or like I can ask it
Mhm.
to. A good example of something which is a little bit more useful is I asked it to write me code in Python, which would allow me to automate my Twitter feed. Like I could just
Mhm.
load
Yeah.
up Twitter posts and then
Mhm.
it would do it.
Yeah.
And now there are tons of services that would do that for you, but you'd have to
Right.
pay it, whatever, like kick them 10, 20 bucks a month to have that. I just wrote it myself based on the scaffolding given to me by ChatGPT. Was it
Mhm.
working right out of the gate? No, I had to debug it because there
Right.
were things that were wrong. Like, for example, it was using a deprecated library as its
Yeah.
base.
Or did it still save you time?
Oh, 100%. It was
Yeah.
just, then
Yeah.
it like built the scaffolding of how to
Yeah.
do it. And all I had to do was like plug and play my username,
Mhm.
password, the API key,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. And then I had to go through it and then debug it. Like I just looked
Right.
up the correct method name because
Yeah.
it was using a deprecated library and it just
Right.
hadn't gotten updated yet. So it's
Mhm.
definitely helpful, and there's somewhere that it
Yeah.
actually is providing value. It's also
Mhm.
taking away the tasks of a higher skilled worker, which is what
Mhm.
people are kind of worried about. But
Yeah,
still,
I think there will be places where it replaces shops for sure.
for sure, eventually. I don't quite know how quick though that's going to happen. That's
No,
sort of
it's
my
going to
bottom line.
depend on the use, right? If you're a company that has 1,000-person customer support department,
Oh yeah,
you can probably implement AI in such a way that cuts your calls down by 30%, right? Great. That's 300 jobs I don't need, right? So,
sure.
there's and to your point on the highly skilled level, I don't really know. One question I would have for you on that, like we've seen enough of these tech fads, right? Or new technologies that coming in from Web 2.0 when we were kind of graduating college, everyone had an app idea. Crypto
Hmm.
and Bitcoin. I remember you telling me that blockchain was going to make title insurance obsolete, right? You said in a text at one point. AI now. I am not an early adopter of any of these. Like I am definitely someone probably on the later end, maybe to my detriment, something I always kind of struggle with. But how do you kind of approach when these, new technologies and new things come in?
With most of them, I like to dabble as like a hobby.
Hmm.
Just I like to poke and prod at it so I get a
Yeah.
sense of it. Like I briefly owned like
Yeah. I
$100
was
worth
on
of
paternity
Bitcoin.
leave when the Super Bowl ad came for Bitcoin, so or for Coinbase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I briefly learned the basics of how,
Hmm.
an app development would work. So I know and I have a point of
Hmm.
reference. And I briefly learned the basics of like Bitcoin and blockchain. So I'd have a
Hmm.
point of reference. I have
Yeah.
never really been an early adopter of trying to
Hmm.
get like on that wave. Like I was never going
Right.
to be like that $10 million crypto bro guy. That was just
Yeah.
never in the cards. I just wasn't in that.
Right.
And it's part because I definitely know that these are so speculative that
Yeah.
you might as well be dumb luck if you're going to be successful or not, or you have to be
Hmm.
so in the right place at the right time with the right people
Yeah.
that if you don't find yourself there by dumb luck, don't even bother trying. That's sort of
Right.
my attitude with a lot of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
A lot of like you're talking about. Oh, I did say I do believe that blockchain is capable of replacing the act of title search and title insurance for
It's
buying a home.
capable. It's never going to happen, but
I
it's
don't know that it
capable.
will never
Yeah.
happen because it
Hmm.
definitely is possible to happen.
Yeah. Sure.
The question becomes, what are the hurdles? And the hurdles, like
Yeah.
so many things, it goes back to like remote work versus working.
Yeah.
It's regulatory hurdles, it's
Yeah.
unwillingness to adopt it. There's a lot of
Hmm.
like non-capitalistic, non compete elements to life that really
Hmm.
keep things in line. Like car dealerships are a great example. Like, why do you go to a car dealership and you buy a car there? Why can't you just go to like Ford.com and buy a car like you buy it
Right.
on Amazon?
Hmm.
There's all sorts of like state-run regulations that kind of keep
Yeah.
the market localized like that because the guy who grandfather started the Chevy dealership and passed it down to his son, passed it down to his grandson,
Yeah.
he wants to maintain that micro monopoly.
Right.
So
But
there's a
it's
lot of
also
things
a
like
great
that.
way for someone like Ford to not have to deal with the selling of cars, the servicing of cars, all of these things. Like let's license brokers and companies to go and do it for us.
Mhm. But wait, that made a lot of sense in say like the 60s, 70s,
Yeah,
80s, because
sure. When
that's
you didn't
there's no
have the
other
internet.
choice. Like
Yeah,
how else would you
right.
do it? The business
Yeah.
model made the most sense. Today, the
Hmm.
business model could change. Tesla's
Yeah,
had run-ins with a lot of the
right.
unions and a lot of those
Yeah,
state laws because that's exactly what they want to do. They're like, why don't you go
yeah,
to Tesla.com? You just pick your color, you pick your model. This is the
right.
price. You just
Yeah,
click buy, and then it gets delivered to your house. I'm sure Elon probably wanted to have the car drive itself to your
Right.
house.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's his goal. But so
Mhm.
much of the industry is pushed back in terms of those like local regulations and
Yeah.
local problems.
But that's
Um,
also, I mean, for putting my entrepreneur hat on, like that's the opportunity, right? And that's also why I'm skeptical, not only of blockchain in real estate, but any like new technology, is because of those hurdles in so many industries and so many of those things kind of trickling through that, like, there are a lot of opportunities in that of, can you, there are companies that are probably like, you walk in and they look like they're in the 1980s, the 1990s, right? Like, I'm not caring, I don't care about putting them into the 2030s. Like, let's just get some, like, you know there's so many steps to get to that point that it's just insurmountable to do it, in a short period of time.
I agree. I agree with you
Yeah.
that there's a lot of
Yeah.
non-obvious, non-technical,
Yeah.
non-financial factors that play a role in why things are
And
slower or
also,
faster
people are
or
just slow to
possible to
change,
ever
right?
arrive.
Yeah.
I
One
mean,
of the things
like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead.
One of the things I'm super interested in now, and I'm not really in a place to do it, unfortunately, is I saw a stat. There are 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. 8 to 10% of those are business owners. That means that per day, there are 800 to 1,000 small businesses where their owners retiring,
Hmm.
right? So what's going to happen to those businesses? Are they selling? Are they closing shop? Like, for someone who is capable of running a business or who wants to, like, that is a path that I think makes a ton of sense in this market, right? I go in, I get my tires changed at Ardmore Tire down the street here in Conshohocken. Great price, great service, easy to deal with. It's like they're in the 1970s. Everything's on paper. They have wood paneling everywhere. They have about like 30 clocks in their office for some reason.
I
I
have
want to
one.
be like,
There's one
like,
similar
can
to
I
me
talk to
like
the
that.
owner? Like you guys can do, like, we can get the space into shape here. Like, they have guys carrying tires who are older than our parents. I'm like, I have a lot of questions.
We have I don't know what it is about like auto mechanics, but
Yeah,
we have similar down the street from me. I go to get like the
yeah,
title updated or something like that.
yeah,
I gotta go get it like, inspected.
yeah,
And I sit in the weight room. It has one of those big CRT monitor TVs on a
yeah,
little stand, and underneath it is a VCR with a pile of old VHS tapes.
yeah,
Like it's got like Disney classics, like VHS. It's like,
yeah,
huh, do I really want to watch like The Rescuers Down Under for which came out in
yeah.
1978 for like 20
Yeah, like
minutes?
that's an opportunity, right? Of going into businesses like that aren't sexy, that, people start businesses that they want to be Facebook, they want to be Amazon, whatever. That's not most businesses, right? Like, you
No,
can make a good amount of money running those non-sexy, boring businesses.
absolutely.
Especially if you have that operational capacity, that ability to kind of deal with, all the BS that comes with running a business.
Oh, absolutely.
So
The trick though, like you said, is you kind of have to know how to do that business, which isn't that's why you split the difference with say like a franchise
I
and
wouldn't
like
I wouldn't say that business. You would have to know how to run a business, right? But yeah,
a
the
business
to
or
your
that
point,
specific industry. Because like, I don't think you could I don't think a guy who knows how to run a pizzeria could go run a mechanic shop,
it would be different, right? It would be a
right?
different mindset. I would argue yes, but it would be a learning
Really?
curve for sure. Yeah, I
I mean,
think
I've been proven
someone
wrong
someone
many
who's
times.
an effective entrepreneur and able to build a system, because you're not going to be the one changing tires, you're not going to be the one flipping pizzas, right? So as long as you realize you're not that, and I have to just build a system in place that does that, I can
Mhm.
do that. But to your point, a franchise already has that, right?
That's true.
What?
That's why the people who don't know how to do it buy the
Yeah,
franchise because then
yeah,
they give you a big book and it says, "Here you go. This is how
right.
you do it." And
There
that's
was, I forget if I have this book behind me, E-Myth, one of my favorite business books. I wish I read it when I was starting LodeStar. I give it to everyone who's starting a business. And
what's it called?
E-Myth, or the E-Myth Revisited, and it's basically talking about, like, most people when they go and start a business, they're really good at a skill, right? They're a mechanic, they're a baker. I'm an artist, I'm a coder, I'm something like that. So I'm doing this now for someone else. I don't like doing it for someone else. I think I can do it for myself. So let me go and do this, right?
Mhm.
And then they go and do that, and they realize they're still doing that work plus 100 other things,
Right.
right? So all you've done is kind of create a job for yourself. Um, and they always say it's the worst job because your boss is a psychopath.
Right.
So the E-Myth, their kind of model is McDonald's, right? Because you can go into any McDonald's in the country. They can teach a 16-year-old in half a day how to serve you a burger, and you get the exact same burger in 2 minutes or whatever, wherever you go. Right. So
Hmm?
you bring up the franchise model, like that's kind of the dream. So the thing they push is creating that system, creating those models. So you're not the one doing all of those things. So I
Right.
think if you're able to effectively do that at a business you purchase or other businesses, that's where it starts to make sense. But a franchise is
That.
usually an easier way of doing that. You probably have less of the upside, but there's less risks. And I think that's why a lot of people get into franchises.
Yep, that's exactly right. You just gotta, I don't know, get in line for that Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
That's the tricky one, right? That's the really hard one to get. I think like more people get into Harvard than get accepted for a Chick-fil-A franchise.
I'm not even sure what they're that Sarah, my wife and I were upset that Wawa doesn't have a franchise model.
Oh, Wawa does
We're
not. They're all
feeling
corporate
no,
owned.
they're not a franchise model. So you
Oh,
can't just go open a Wawa.
we're exposing our geographic heritage by talking about Wawa.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I
Philly,
grew up
South
in New England. I was
Jersey.
a Dunkin' person. I go to Wawa several times a week. My daughter can say Wawa now. She
Mm.
goes into Wawa. She's like queen of Wawa because everyone knows her in there. She'll
Wow,
like
that's
walk
great.
around. Yeah,
You were a Dunkin' Donuts guy from Rhode
yeah,
Island.
yeah, yeah.
Do they still have them? They have Dunkin' Donuts in Philadelphia,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. There's a Dunkin' Donuts just down the street. It's not once you get out of New England, I don't think they're as good personally.
They're a little harder
But
to find.
yeah.
I'm down in North Carolina. They are scant, and they're not drive-throughs.
What is the coffee place then? Do they have like a
So
localized like version of
it's
Wawa or
it's
Sheets or
it's primarily Starbucks.
Mhm. But what's
Starbucks
your
has
like gas station coffee place? Like your 7-Eleven, your Cumberland Farms, your
there's
Wawa, your Sheets.
there's kind of a wide mixture.
Hmm.
They're more like the convenience stores where you want to get like your Red Bull or like your pack of cigarettes or your whatever.
Lotto
In
tickets.
terms of
Hmm.
coffee, it's pretty much Starbucks, and what they have is they have all those mobile pop-up, not pop-ups, but they're the ones that are like inside the grocery store.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
after checkout, there's like a
Yep.
Starbucks at the end. It's got a lot of that because there's a
Okay.
grocery store at
Makes
like every
sense.
corner down here, so they all have a
Yeah.
Starbucks inside.
Hmm. Mm.
Like down here with that, it's to get back to like with the franchising and whatnot. There's a grocery store in every plaza. Every
Yeah.
plaza has a grocery store, and it's to the
Hmm.
point where everybody has like theirs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like you'll ask like, which Harris Teeter do you go to? It's like, oh, I go to the one down on this, or like,
Yeah.
oh, I like the one over here better because it's got the whatever. And they're all like
Yeah.
slowly but surely getting more and more like date nighty. Like they have bars in them. You can go sit and get like a glass of Chardonnay in the grocery store. It's wild.
Yeah.
I keep threatening my wife that like that's where our date night's gonna be. I'm gonna take her to the grocery store.
I've had date nights with my wife where we've walked through a Target or something. We're like, we ate dinner, we don't want to go home.
Oh
So
yeah.
we got to do this anyway. Let's just actually take our time and not drag a 2-year-old through
Oh yeah. That's
Target.
the best way to do it for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
The taking the kids to anywhere is a giant pain in the ass, and just not having the kids
Yeah.
feels like a vacation when you get to certain points in life, and specifically certain places.
Yeah.
Like it's too bad Toys R Us doesn't really exist anymore, but that used to be where the toys were.
Mm.
Now the toys are in Target. Now the toys are in Macy's.
Right.
Now the toys are
Yeah.
in all there's a toy aisle in the grocery store. So then you
A
always have
parenting
to,
hack I heard that I haven't tried yet. It's like, especially if it's bad weather and you want to take your kids somewhere to entertain them, go to Petco or PetSmart.
I've done that.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
I've not gotten to that point, but I'm glad it's an arrow in my quiver just so they can like look at all the things. I
Yeah.
also don't have any pets, so I don't regularly go to Petco or PetSmart, so I would have no reason to actually go there.
Well, yeah, that's the rub. What's nice about going there
Yeah.
is, I mean, a lot of those places they don't have like cats and dogs there regularly,
Right.
but it's actually more like you're taking them to like a zoo because they're
Yeah,
like, come on, let's look at the
exactly.
fish, let's look at the
Yeah.
gerbils, let's look at
Yeah.
occasionally you'll see ones that have like reptiles, like oh look, it's a
Hmm.
lizard, isn't that cool? Like
Yeah.
this will kill 15 minutes while we're waiting for like whatever, like the Chinese
Yeah.
food to be done or whatever
Exactly.
whatever
Yeah.
you're doing, just go down the
Yeah,
street.
it's gonna happen at some point, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, is your daughter, is she I think of it because like having multiple, a lot of times you're just looking for something to like occupy them both simultaneously,
Right.
and pets and animals is something that both age groups will be interested in. Because
Fair.
sometimes you get
Yeah.
like I see the point where the older one wants to do X and the younger one can't do that. where the younger one wants to do X, but this one thinks that's a
Like
baby.
the younger one can stare at it and the older one can get involved, right?
Something along those lines.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
find something where they both fit in. So like
Yeah.
in that vein, like your daughter, is she going to be like ready for what's to come when she's suddenly going to have to share that attention and compromise on that with the new baby?
Short answer is probably no.
Yeah, yeah.
She's just, I mean, she's a little, she turned 2 in October. She's aware of what's going on to an extent, but I think she's been super obsessed with me all her life so far. So I think seeing
Me
me,
too. We have
yeah.
something in common.
Being obsessed with me or your daughter's being obsessed with you?
Both.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think seeing me with another child or something like that is going to be interesting.
Oh, do you think it'll be that
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I think that
surprising?
could be at the beginning. Yeah, a little bit. So we'll see. Like there's been times I accidentally knock her down, starts crying.
Accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally. Right. She falls down because I like bump into her or whatever. It happens. We're toddler parents here. She starts crying. And Sarah goes to grab her, and then she calls for me anyway,
Right.
even after I'm the one who knocked
You're the
her down.
perpetrator, but you're also the
Yeah,
consoler.
yeah,
Sure. No,
yeah.
I
So
get that. I get that a lot.
yeah,
That my kids have gotten very well versed in who they should go to over what.
yeah.
It's like I lay down the law at bedtime.
Okay.
Like I'm like, you're gonna go to bed, you're gonna lay down, TV's off, lights are out, lay down, you're in your room. So I'm the one who lays down the law on that. So whenever they're trying to call like for a commute their sentence, so to speak, and get a couple
Yeah,
extra minutes, they're always trying to ask their mom, who really just says, ask your dad. She
yeah.
just
Fair.
dodges the whole thing.
Smart.
But that's what happens sometimes.
Hmm.
Well, Jim, I know we're coming up on time, and I do appreciate you
Hmm.
being here. Do you have any last thoughts or well wishes to the audience before we sign off here today?
One
Keep in
question I
mind your
forgot to ask
schedule.
you around kids is what was the hardest thing about going from 1 to 2?
See, that's a good question. A lot of people ask that question, like, "Oh, is it hardest
Yeah,
to go from 1 to 2?" Or some people argue it's 2 to 3. The
right.
answer is 0 to 1. Like, let's not kid
Yeah,
ourselves. The
yeah.
right answer is 0 to 1.
Hmm.
The biggest difference between going from 1 to 2, I think, was just like recognizing that they are different people and
Yeah.
require different attitudes on
Hmm.
things because like something like I just mentioned sleeping. One of my kids hates sleeping, never has liked to sleep.
Right.
Sleeping was always a pain in the ass. The other
Hmm.
one, if you can peel her off, the older one, and get her
Yeah.
isolated, will go down pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that's time served learning the nuances of each child because I used to try some of the things on the older or tactics I refined with the older one. I tried to
Hmm.
apply to the younger one to no avail.
Yeah.
And it should
Right.
like, the individuality is really a thing and you notice it immediately.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
it's like when people had their you kind of have to self tell tell yourself something
Hmm.
that maybe you learned from other people telling you during your first. And what I mean is you have your
Yeah.
first kid and you get all these ideas from people like, oh, they're not eating, you should try
Hmm.
this. Oh no, try that.
Yeah.
No, try this, try
Yeah.
this. And there's no telling what will work. You just have to keep trying until you find the one that works for
For me,
you.
parenting's the definition of insanity, right? You're literally trying the same thing again and again and again and expecting different results because that will probably happen sometimes, right? The 10th
Yes.
time you try the same thing, it could work.
Yes, absolutely. That is true,
Yeah.
but slightly different variation sometimes. You're like, let me
Yeah.
try it this way. No, let me try it the other way.
Right.
Let me try it with like,
Yeah.
let me put it with a hat on.
But
Let me try the green one versus the red one. Like, would you try all these
I
different
saw a
small
post
variations?
online. Someone asked their daughter, who was, 2 or 3, hey, do you want a rice bowl? No. Okay. Do you want rice? Yep. Do you want rice in a bowl? Yep.
Exactly. Yes, that's
Like,
what it is.
okay. Like,
So
that's
you finally figure out what works for the second one, and you're like,
yeah.
great, I finally figured this out. I got it. The second one comes along, and you try the exact same thing, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't work at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. That's
You at least
okay.
have all of the ideas, which you
Right. You have the
previously buried.
knowledge. Yeah.
You at least already have the bag of ideas to try this time, which is helpful because the first time around you're just hoping you'll
Right.
try anything, you'll take anything you can get. At least now you have a bunch of ideas you can try, but you still
Yeah.
got to figure out which one works.
Okay.
That's pretty much the
Excellent.
bottom line with once you start to get to a new one. And
Okay.
we're gonna have to redo that whole thing again, and we're gonna have to put boy slants on all of it.
Yeah.
You know, like what was used to be a magic princess wand toy might now be a, I don't know, a
Sword.
pirate sword toy. You know, it'll just be the same
You know,
thing, just in a
or it
different.
can be a princess wand for a little bit. What are they gonna know? So
Whatever. That's a, I
yeah.
don't really care. But
Fair enough.
all
Well,
right.
hey, thanks for having me on. This was a fun conversation.
No, I
I'm surprised
appreciate
55 minutes went by so fast.
it. Does. It's amazing
Yeah.
what happens when you actually get rolling. So,
Yeah.
what do we got now? So today we're in February expiration, and then next month in March we have somebody a little closer to home, so to speak, who's going to be here. So that should be good. I'm really trying to get some live guests, which I think won't happen until mid-year.
Hmm.
But I have a few other people lined up who I think I'll be crossing paths with that we're going to try to get on here. And then the last thing I'll point out to everybody, the Trader Dad store, traderdads.com, that is now open. And I'm having all sorts of little fun accessories available for anyone who is interested for your trading desk. We have some t-shirts with some great swag. We have some patches. I love the patches. I'm going to keep pushing the patches because I just think it's cool to have a patch. Like that's like old school trader jackets. They all had their patches and things on it. So I'm going to bring it back.
I
But
like it.
traderdads.com is open. Check that out. And for anyone else who gets one of these clips, don't forget to like and subscribe. Plus, we have the Substack, weekly Substack. So, Jim, thank you very much. I
Yeah.
will speak to you soon.
Thanks, Mike.